it's a short thing. It's from Tafkuf Nun Zayin, I think. It's from before Liad. Vinay Ktiv. So what should a person do in order to return his power of speech? And again, we finished yesterday with the idea that the power of speech begins in the heart. And the heart is...
Why not in the brain?
Because you don't speak from your brain. Where does the air come out from? It doesn't go down.
Tells you what to say.
It doesn't go down, but the power of speech is from the lungs. It's from the trachea. That's a very good point. But the heart is the heat source, and all that the lungs do is the heart warms up the air in the lungs, and the lungs just take it out. So the energy for speech is from the heart. Now you could. This is an interesting topic what you just brought up. Somebody's very academic. Where do they speak from? They try to speak from the head, from the mind. But you see that the anybody in the world can be unbalanced. Okay? You can ask them questions that will get them heated and angry.
Everybody.
Okay? So it doesn't matter if you think that your mind is ruling your speech. Your speech really is coming from your heart.
Your emotions.
And it's emotional. Speech is meant to be emotional. That's why speech has power. On the other hand, you don't see...
The history of mankind, it's quite amazing how there were some people who managed to stir up millions of people.
Right.
Just from talking.
Now, there's two forms of verbal communication that we use, right? We use written communication and we use oral communication.
Also non-verbal communication.
No, but I'm talking about verbal. I said verbal. So the written communication is really from the mind. It's very hard to write emotions in a way that you will be turned on just by reading it.
Some people can do that as well.
No, you have to contemplate it. The person who's reading has to connect. And if they don't like the way you describe things, they won't pick up on what's going on. Not to mention the fact that when you read something, you don't know if a person is being facetious, whether they're saying something tongue-in-cheek. You don't know whether they're serious or not serious, or they're being cynical. You have no idea. You could mistake satire for a serious business.
But there was a guy...
But you can't do that with speech. It doesn't work. Because speech harbors emotions inside. So there's a whole thing, before you tell me about the guy, there's a whole thing that when people want to communicate an emotional topic, they try to write it. And they try to discuss it. That's the, you could say, the benefit of the written word. The written word does come from the mind. But the spoken word comes from the heart. Okay, now tell me about the person, if you don't mind passing me the water also.
With or without the written.
So there was a person who?
There was a person who lived in England by the name of Charles Dickens, and he used to write stories. But in those days, the stories were written in newspapers. And there was a newspaper that came out every week, once a week. And
They were serialized.
It was serialized. And when the second part of the first, after the first part of the new story appeared, there were people queue up in London at 2 o'clock in the morning waiting to come off the presses. And there would be literally hundreds of thousands of people waiting to read it. So you see that writing can affect many hundreds of people.
Of course it can affect. But it's not the same thing.
But it's still a powerful tool.
It's maybe the most powerful. We're just saying that there's verbal communication from the mind, there's verbal communication from the heart. So for you to be able to write emotions, you have to have what we call the emotions in the intellect. That the mind can think what love is like and what fear is like. It can think all these things, even though it doesn't feel them. Okay. So what he ended with last time is that your speech is blemished. The covenant of speech, the covenant of the tongue is blemished. So how are you going to talk to Hashem now? on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. How are you going to come to Pnimius Alev, to the inner aspect of the heart? Because the speech starts from the heart. So it's really a blemish of the, he told us, it's like you locked your, that's the image I used yesterday, it's like you locked your heart in an iron box, and there's no feeling. He says, even the continuation of the verse that we saw yesterday. What was the verse we saw yesterday? Right? The eyes of all are cast upon you, yearning for you. And you give them their bread or their food in its time. So he says, until now, what did we think? We thought this was talking just about food. But this whole verse is really talking about the ability of a person to connect to Hashem. It's not just about food. So he says, really, you should know that our eyes are cast upon Hashem, and Hashem awakens our hearts when He thinks that it's time. V'zeu be'ito. Pirush be'et v'shah shesh l'chol adam. He says every person has a designated hour above. It's designated above that at that time his heart is going to awaken. And that's what it means, she'enach adam she'eno shah, that there's no person who doesn't have a particular hour. And an hour we mean a time for prayer. Sha'ah also means lish'ot. It means to pray. So enach adam she'eno sha'ah, there's no person who doesn't have a prayer, if you want.
But in the tshuva what he spoke back then, he can change the mitzvah. So what, he can't do it until Hashem decrease it?
To get to the inner aspect of the heart, yeah, it's that bad, because the moment that you've blemished the covenant, so it's not that simple. You have no gisha, you have no way to get into the inner aspect of the heart. It says, so it means, what does it mean? It's a beautiful explanation. What does it mean that there's no person who doesn't have an hour? There's no person who doesn't have a prayer. Because hour is also the word for prayer. Where we see this, שיש בכל אדם, ביכולת כל אדם להפנות רצונו אל ההיפוך ממש. So now he says, what does it mean that the person has a prayer? That he has the ability to completely turn himself upside down, 180 degrees. Meaning, the way I understand it is he's saying that there's a particular time when you'll be able to turn everything upside down, where you'll be able to reverse the negative influence that you've had on your own heart.
As in Choser Tshuva.
Yeah.
You spin upside down to go back to the again.
But it's a particular time. It's not just the moment that he decides. That's how I understand it. So to awaken this time, you have to ask for compassion, for mercy from above. That's what it means that all the eyes are cast upon God. Why are they cast upon Him? Because a person wants to come to a state in which there's compassion upon him, and therefore he'll be able to turn his life around. So why is it called the eyes? Why didn't you say the heart? It says because the eyes are higher than the heart. Okay. Because the eyes are like the judges. The eyes are like surveying everything. They see everything. They even survey. Yeah. So the eyes can see what state the heart is in. The heart can't feel anymore, but the eyes can see it. The eyes can see what what a difficult situation I'm in. אליך יסבר, שהוא עניין התעוררות בחינת רחמים רבים, דהיינו יודע שהתבונן איך הוא נמשך ממקום גבוה מאוד. בחינת נקודת פנימיות הלב, בחינת ליבבתיני אחותי חלה הנ"ל, ותרד פלאים מטה מטה, והרחמנות הזו גדולה מאוד. So what is he seeing? He's seeing, why is he awakening compassion? Because he himself has compassion on what? He says on the soul that's in my heart, that has come so far down because of my actions, because I blemished my heart. The covenant of the tongue, the covenant of the heart. So because of that, because I can see it, I can have compassion on myself. And when a person has compassion on his own state, it also awakens from above. They should have compassion upon him. That's sometimes people think you shouldn't feel sorry for yourself. It's not exactly feeling sorry for yourself. It's feeling sorry for the divine spark that's been cast so low. It's true, it's me. It's part of me. So I'm not saying woe is me because my arm hurts or anything like that. I'm saying woe is me because God gave me a divine spark and look at what I did with it. Look at how low it sunk. So if I'm fallen in that way, so it says before the Ayin in Ashrei that God supports all those who fall. And he makes stand upright all those who are bent over. מי שעושה בענייני העולם בכל מוחו בשכלו, אינו מוריד חב"ד שלו למטה מטה, ודומה כמו למשל אדם שכופף ראשו. What does it mean that God supports those who have fallen? What does it mean that he has to bring up, he has to make stand those who are bent? What does it mean spiritually? To be fallen or to be bent over? So he says, he starts with a bent over. He says that really you should only invest the external aspects of your being in living in the world, in providing for all your physical needs. You should only use the external faculties of who you are, right? Right?
What do you mean? I don't understand.
What do you mean? You know this. You know this cold. What does it mean? It'll only be the sweat of your brow. Why the sweat of your brow? Because the sweat of your brow is external. You don't invest your mind in it. See, it's not saying with the sweat of your brain. It's saying with the sweat of your brow. Because in providing for your physical needs, you should only be involved in it as much as is needed. You don't need to expend all your energy on it.
Okay.
You should expend your energy in other places. Okay? If you're watching YouTube videos, okay? So don't spend 3 hours a day learning about your profession, because that you don't need. Spend 20 minutes. And in 3 hours, you learn Torah. And that's what it means. That's how a person should lead his life. Don't get overly involved in how your parnasa is going to come, because it'll come because Hashem wants you to have livelihood. Instead, use your time for what really needs your dedication, what really needs the investment of your intellect, and that's Torah. In any case, what do we get from this? That somebody who is doing the opposite, who is spending all his intellect, investing himself totally in his livelihood, is called bent over. He's a kafuf rosh. What does it mean? That he's bending his head instead of dealing with divine things, because the head is above. He's bent it down. It's a symbol for bending it down to deal with mundane matters. Okay? So that's Zokef Hashem Lechol HaKfufim. Okay? What does it mean to be fallen? Umizeh Yachol Lipol Yoter, but he could fall over even more. Not just be bent over. If he's bent over, you just have to lift him up and explain to him that you don't need to invest your whole mind in your livelihood. So it's a very important point. People miss this. They don't know. People really don't know. They think that Jeff Bezos is rich because he really invested himself in understanding what there's a million people who invested themselves and they're smarter than him. It didn't help them one bit.
What did he have that Hashem chose him to be?
I don't know. But it's got nothing to do with how much of his mind he invested in it. And even if you would say that it gave him a little bit of an edge. Okay. So how much smarter is he? Could you measure how much smarter he is than the average person by looking at his bank account? Meaning the average person is about 100 IQ. So he must have 10 trillion IQ? I don't know what. Obviously, it's not true. So even if he is a little bit smarter, that doesn't explain the tremendous gap between how successful one person has been and how successful he's been. So he's been successful because Hashem wanted him to be successful. Every person has a bit of common sense, understands that. What?
He's not even Jewish.
Doesn't matter. They take somebody else. Take the two Google guys, Larry Bird and whatever, Sergey Brin. So what? They're that much smarter? They're not.
Right time at the right place, that's all.
The right time, the right place is another way of saying Hashgacha. That's how Hashem wanted. So, obviously, if they wouldn't have invested even a little bit of their head, they wouldn't be anywhere. Because you can't just sit back and count, and count clouds in the sky and you're going to be successful in life. It doesn't work that way. You have to invest something. But the major investment of the mind should be in Torah. The major investment of the mind should be in what is purposeful in life. So if you begin to bend your head over, to put it into mundane matters and put a big investment in it, you may fall over. You're not just going to bend over, you're going to fall over. And when you fall over, what does it mean? כשיש לו ספקות באמונה, then he begins to have doubts about whether it's Hashem at all. Okay. The guy who's bent over, so he's investing a lot of time in his thinking about how his mundane matters, but he still believes that it's Hashem that's giving it. But to fall over, it's like when you've been there too long, and eventually you get dizzy and you fall over. So it says eventually a person stops believing that the livelihood that he has is from Hashem. He begins to think it's all for me. כמו שכתוב, והעמדת במרחב רגלי, שיש לו ספקות באמונה, הוא נופל ממקום רגליו. That Hashem is what holds a person up, holds him steadfast, he sustains him, standing up. And if he bends over until he falls, so that's called having doubts in faith. רק שיש לו רגליים, פני שיסה על עצמם, הם מאמינים. לכן נקרא בשם נפילה לבד. Still, he's not called a person who's had his feet removed. He's not a cripple. Okay? He's not handicapped. We say he fell. Why? Because even if he doesn't believe that everything is from Hashem, that his livelihood is from God, he's still a Jew. He's still a Jew. And as a Jew, he only falls, but he's not going to be crippled. Okay? He can always start walking again. He can also always stand up again. What does that mean? So he said, because we're all believers in the end. In the end, we do have faith. So even if you've lost it and you've fallen over, you can get up. Okay? You don't have to remain on the floor. על ידי שאיני יכול ללכת לסבר, ואז ואתה נותן להם תאכלם בעיתו, שנמשך ממעלה י"ג מידות החכמים, שנקראים י"ג נהרין דאפרסמון הדחיה. So all these states, whether you're bent over or you're fallen, God sustains. He tries to pick them up. When you yearn for him, when you look to him. And then he can give you what's called the 13 measures of compassion. What does it mean? For me to have compassion means I should first of all have compassion on the divine spark in me, and not just say, well, that's your lot in life. Your lot in life is to come down and give me life, and I'll do whatever I want. No, I should have compassion that Hashem gave me a divine spark, and I'm probably not using it for what it should be. So I need to have compassion on it. Very interesting thing. That we don't even pay attention, or we don't usually pay attention to this spark. We just assume it's our rightful inheritance. Why are the 13 measures of compassion called 13 rivers of pomegranate, of pure pomegranate? So he says obviously it's a metaphor, and in the same way that a river expands and lengthens, כך שלוש המידות האלו נמשכים והולכים למקום גבוה ועליון מאוד, שמתפשטים למטה ונקראים מים טהורים שחפשים מהבנות, כמו שכתוב הרף חפשני מעווני. He says in the same way that the river expands and it draws out and it moves, in the same way these 13, the further downstream it goes, the wider it is. Any river. You would say that it happens there because there's a lot of extra, right, from the water reservoir. There's a lot of water coming in. The beginning of at the beginning of the river where the wellspring was, it's just a trickle. But then more and more water goes into the river, so it expands. But the point is, why is a river used to describe the 13 measures of compassion? Why are they described as rivers of pure pomegranate juice? The point is a river. Pomegranate juice is another question. But why does the Zohar use this metaphor of a river to describe them? There's nowhere it doesn't mention anywhere that they're like a river. It just says God, that Hashem said to Moshe these words. So why liken them to a river? He says, כמו נהר הנמשך והולך ומתפשט, כך עוד ג' המידות האלו נמשכים והולכים ממקום גבוה ועליון מאוד, עד שמתפשטים למטה. Because they too, they're like Torah in this sense. They flow from a high place to a low place. The high place is how they are before God, these measures of compassion. And the low place is when they appear in me. Right? We said before that it begins from me feeling compassion over my divine spark. Right? I'll go. You're still in the pool.
Huh?
Looks like you're still in the pool.
No, I'm stuck.
Yeah.
I didn't take my resume this morning.
Are we going to hear the end of it or what?
Yeah, after about 20 years.
Okay, that's fine. And they're called pure waters.
I'm jealous of it.
Go ahead.
Where did you get them from?
Prescription, what do you mean? How do you get them? They're narcotics.
Yeah,
You have to sign for them.
I know.
It's a whole big deal.
You got some GP to prescribe it for you?
No, he went to a specialist. Convinced him he needs to give it to me.
Yeah.
That's very... My wife told me a long time ago.
Yeah?
She told me, I think when she, I think after a couple of years of being married, she said, you're undiagnosed. I'm diagnosing you now.
Okay.
So,
I should have told you to put on the air conditioning.
because I'm sitting in front of the nice wind.
Right.
You're not feeling it. What time is it? 11:45. So anyway, so the river goes from a high place to a low place. That's how water flows. So these measures of compassion, they come from a high place before Hashem into me, into a low place. So that's why they're likened to a river. But they're also described as pure waters. Why? Because they cleanse the transgressions that a person has. Compassion has a way of getting rid of transgressions. A very interesting idea.
I thought it's like you.
You thought it was tshuva. He's saying no, it's the compassion that does it.
Compassion of you, of your neshama.
compassion of Hashem that comes down into me having compassion over my neshama. Obviously, it's part of tshuva because it's regret, right? In a certain sense, having compassion is like the first step to regret. If I don't feel compassion for my soul, my divine spark, and how low I've taken it, I'm not going to do tshuva. I'm not going to change my ways. I'm not going to return to God. So I have to have some measure of, some degree of, call it identifying with my divine spark and feeling where it is and understanding what it's going through. Need to have that. So he says in that sense it's cleansing waters. Because they cleanse the sins. והנה כמו למשל נהר נובע שמוצאו ממקור מעיין, כך הוא גם מידותינו ממשיכים והולכים ממקור מים חיים בעירה עמיקה דחולה, אור אין סוף ברוך הוא סתימה דחות סתימים. Just in the same way, if we continue the metaphor, that the river begins in a wellspring, so the 13 measures of compassion, they also begin in a wellspring. What's the wellspring? The wellspring is the light of the infinite. What does it mean? That the infinite cannot enter into our reality because we can't hold the infinite. So what's the wellspring? The wellspring is what we call ma'avar yabuk. It's the interface between the infinite and the finite. That's why it comes out drop by drop in the beginning. Because if it would come out the way it is in its source, infinite, it would drown the whole world. That's the story I think we've talked about in the past. When King David was building the foundations of the temple, so they had to build the shitin, these two, call it almost like how do you say it? Almost like pipes that go down to the bedrock, and when they were excavating, they went too far down, and then they hit beyond the bedrock. And it says the water came up and flooded the world. Obviously, something happened there. I don't know what happened in reality, but this whole thing is a medrash. It's trying to tell me something. He's saying that every one of us has the danger, the risk of breaking beyond the wellspring and flooding ourselves. We've talked about this before. What?
Sounds very dangerous.
Yeah, that's what basically losing your mind means. What happens when a person loses his mind, or some people who think they have powers or all kinds of strange things? They've excavated beyond the wellspring. They've gone too far.
So it's better to be just a simple person.
But you still have to try to bring the compassion down. So you have to collect the water from the wellspring. It's very interesting that when they anointed a king, they would take him down to the wellspring of the Shiloach. Mea Shiloach ha'olchim le'at. Because in the beginning it was, right, it's also the same place where they took the water for the Simchas Beis HaShoeva.
Mm-hmm.
So it says in the Mishnah that they tried making the opening a little bit wider because it took too long to fill up the basin. So the moment they opened it up too much, it stopped. It's like chesed that Hashem does. If you try to open it too much, instead of drowning you, it stopped entirely. Why? Because there has to be a certain amount of pressure. Why pressure? Because we said that the origin of the 13 measures of compassion is in the infinite. How do you transfer the infinite into the finite? So the only way you can really do that is you have to concentrate it. In every drop you have to put concentrated infinity. So it's like taking on the infinite and squashing it and concentrating it until you get a single drop. So only a drop can really symbolize the infinite. You couldn't take 2 liters and say, oh, this is infinite. You can't. Why does the single drop symbolize the infinite? Because the infinity goes in both ways. It can be infinitely large, or what we call infinitesimally small. There's a whole thing today in physics that the large and the small are exactly the same as long as you go far enough. Meaning you go far enough into the large and far enough into the small. So they all work exactly the same. So that's the idea here, that that there's a wellspring here that brings the compassion down. It means that to really bring the compassion down, you have to focus yourself. You have to concentrate yourself. You have to reach this. How do you do that? It's called bittul. Bittul is what turns on the faucet. It's what gets the drops through the barrier between the infinite and the finite. I hope this is the imagery. It's run in many places. Bittul means that I come and say, it's not in my hands, Hashem, it's in your hands.
I have bittul.
Yeah, it's you. It's me. I'm infinite. How can you suddenly have some relationship with me? It says, since you want a relationship, I'm willing to show myself drop by drop. So bittul is like the handle that opens that river, that opens that wellspring. Okay? וזהו פותח את ידיך, אל תקרא ידיך אלו ידיך, שנפתחים בחינת יודין, שהוא מקור הנובע, שהוא עמוק, שאין לו מושג, לכן נקרא בשם יוד. So he says, that's the next verse in Ashrei. פותח, after we said, סומך השם לכל הנופלים וזוקף לכל הכפופים. Then we said, עיני יכול ללך זברו ואתה נותן להם תאכלם בעיתו. Then we say, פותח את ידיך ומשביע לכל חי רצון. So פותח את ידיך, what does it mean? It means open, literally means opening your hands. You open your hands and you give sustenance to everyone. But here he's using it in a different sense. He said, "Poteach et yadecha" is like open your yudim. Your letter is yud, the smallest letter of the alphabet, which symbolizes the drop. It's also the chokhmah. Bittul is chokhmah. So poteach et yadecha is like that's the handle that allows you to open the faucet, to open the wellspring, so that drop by drop it can come out. ואז משביע לכל חי רצון, פירוש לכל מקום שיש בו חיות, ואפילו מעט מזר, משביע ומשיך בחינת רצון, שהוא בחינת מים טהורים עניים. So then, he gives sustenance to everyone. What does the sustenance here mean? He gives sustenance of will. The will here is the compassion. The will to do tshuva. That comes out as a result of a person having bittul, a person turning the knob here, and letting the infinite come down in the form of drops of compassion. Okay? And that's how you give will over to someone. It's a very deep thing. He's saying, if you see someone who is lifeless, who has no purpose in life, who doesn't know what to do with themselves, okay? You should know that what's missing in this person's life is compassion. Nobody had Rahmanas on him. Nobody ever showed him compassion. There's an amazing story about this. I think I told it to you once. The Alter Rebbe. I don't know where it came from. It says that the Alter Rebbe, when he was a younger man, before he was a Rebbe in the Yozhna.
Just for a second. That's my boss calling. Hello? כן, מי זה? מי אתה? מאיפה אתה? מאיפה? אוקיי, הבנתי. תעבור לבית כנסת של רבי דורוף ביום ראשון מנחה ומערב, בסדר? דורוף, רמות ג' מרחס, כל טוב. מתי? טרם ידוע לי. מנחה ומערב, הכי טוב. זה קבוע, אוקיי. כל טוב. Told me to come and get money from you. So I don't know. It's sure. Oh, money. Yeah, Jonathan sent me a message. Thank you very much.
He gave you?
Yeah, he sent me a
When did you see him?
He sent me an SMS.
Oh,
So he's coming to take something.
Hmm?
Whoever he is, he wants to share. So
the
then
story
that's it.
is
Yeah.
that he was going around in some place.
Yeah, forever.
It was a younger man.
Yeah.
He was probably in his 20s or 30s. And he came into a town.
With a bent coin.
Hmm?
Story with a bent coin.
Yeah. So, I should say the story because I don't think everybody knows it.
Mm-hmm.
At least the way I remember it. So there was a pidyon shvuim that they had to get together to save some Jew from the nobleman there, and they saw that he was a learned guy. They said, maybe you can help us. I said, okay, let's make a list of all the Jews in the area, and we'll divide it up. We'll go one by one. We'll gather the money to pay the fine. So they go through everything, but they still come up short. So he says, there must be another Jew that you haven't mentioned. There must be more people. So they say, yeah, there's one person who's very, very wealthy, but
He doesn't give me.
he never gives for anything. So the Alter Rebbe said, let's go visit him anyway. So they went to visit him, and he let them in. But when he heard that they wanted money, he said, I don't give money, you can leave, there's no point. So the Alter Rebbe began to say, oh, maybe you have something on you. I understand you don't want to give me something on you. So he said, okay, hold on a second. He goes upstairs, comes back down with a copper coin, completely bent out of shape, like this. I don't know even if anybody will take it. This is my contribution. So the Alter Rebbe, the other ones, the other people that came, they stomped out. They didn't want to hear anymore because they knew this was his approach, and there's nobody to talk to him. He had no heart. The Alter Rebbe sees the coin. He says, "Thank you so much. This is exactly what we needed. You don't understand what you just did. I can understand how difficult it was, and I commend you for it. It's such a tremendous tzedakah that you just gave. It's like you and I would give a penny." He commends him, and he's a big Talmud Chacham. He's standing there, and he's flattering him from now to the end of the earth. So the others, they look at him. What's wrong with him? Why is he doing this? As he's singing his praises, he says, but maybe you have one more coin. So the guy liked it. So he goes upstairs and he finds another coin, this one a little bit less bent. He brings it down. Again, the Alter Rebbe praises him from now to the end. This repeats again and again and again until he gave them the whole sum that they were missing. And then the Alter Rebbe said, wait for me outside, I need to speak to him. So they stayed together for like 20 minutes, and the Alter Rebbe talked to him, and then he left, and they said, what was this? What did you do? He says, you don't understand. This man has a golden heart, or at least he thought he does. He thinks he does. He doesn't, but he thinks he does. And so, when he was young, and he didn't have as much money, but he had money, so he came across somebody begging for money. And this man that was begging for money had a large family, and he needed a lot of it. And he saw a young man who's well-to-do. He's not super wealthy, but he's well-to-do. He can certainly help him a lot. And he, who thought he had a really good heart, he pushed his hand into his trousers and comes up with something that's worth like $20. This guy needs $1,000. It's $20. So he gives him the coin. He's expecting to be commended and praised and thank you so much, sir, and what this and that. Instead, the guy who was frustrated, no fault of his, he took the coin that he gave him and he said, "This This is all you can give me? And he threw it at him, and he cursed him. And it hurt him so much because he was so sure that he had a golden heart, and he's such a good person. And look at what just happened. That's the thing that happens to everybody. We think we're great people, we're wonderful people, and then reality spits in our face and tells us, look, you're not such a big find. And then we don't want to hear about it anymore. So that's what happened to him. So he couldn't give anything. So what do you need to do? You need to have compassion. When you have compassion, it opens it up. So at first it comes out drop by drop. Because you have to understand that you've got this infinite pain plus infinite expectation, which is now trying to force itself through the little opening that you've opened. And so all that comes out is a little bent coin that was like, had to somehow make its way through. But then, as you
reputed to have said, I'll never give soccer again ever to anybody until someone takes this bent coin.
So basically, somebody wants to hear the bent coin is like is a symbol for him, right? It's a symbol for because when the poor man that received it and threw it back at him, he told him, you're not worth anything. You're not worth anything. So the bent coin that he gives, that's like his projection of himself. And he says, if somebody will be willing to accept me, meaning the bent coin, really me, with all my faults, then maybe I'm willing to listen to that. And that's what compassion is. That's exactly what compassion is. And that's why compassion opens up everything. It makes everything possible. I think we need to end here. So, it's a very powerful lesson about compassion.
Yeah, I told you this story about Rachmanis so many times.
About?
Rachmanis, many times.
Probably not.
I told you 100 times. This is actually
I don't remember.
There's a guy called Herman, the one who was written about in the book called All for the Boss.
Okay.
And he was in America, then he came here. He came to live in Israel before 67. He went to live in Swarovski.
Talking about the chund.
Huh? The children, yeah.
Yeah, go ahead. Go.
Oh, you know the story, you tell me.
Facebook doesn't know.
Okay, so some guy, he has a big house and full of visitors, and every Shabbos, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 people, whoever wants comes and sits down and eats. So when everybody's finished eating, and the day's almost over, some guy wanders in. He wasn't completely all with it. And Herman, he looks disgusted, he smells, and Herman walks up, gives him a big hug and says, I'm so glad you came for Shabbos, I was worried you didn't show. Sit down here, he says, let me bring you some chulent. He brings him a big bowl of chulent. And the guy takes the bowl of chulent and he says, this is what you give me? And he threw it in his face. Covered his kapota and his triangle and all. So Herman says, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't realize. He brings him a bigger bowl of chulent and a better bowl of chulent. He says, oh, now you're talking. He sits down and eats it. So after the Meshuyah left, somebody says, Rachmanis, he says, you know, how do you have such great Rachmanis? How can you be like that? So, no, he says, Savlonis, have you got such patience for a guy like that? The guy says, if you have Rachmanis, you don't need some.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Shabbos.
I'm a bit